All right, we're hot, we're rolling, and I'm here with Diane Turnshek, who is an astronomer, writer, and environmentalist. And it's so great to see you. I love our talks. I always do love our talks, and I missed you.
It's wonderful to talk to you. I enjoyed that so much.
We always have such interesting talks. I met you because you run an outreach program for the University of Pittsburgh, correct? And that's at the Allegheny Observatory.
Yeah, the public lecture series has been going on for decades. And every month we've been having an astronomer. Usually it's a local astronomer, but sometimes we get people from Ohio that drive in, or West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And I try really hard to mix it up, because at Carnegie Mellon, there's mostly cosmologists. And right. So we have these talks over and over and over, but
yeah, but people love cosmology. They love that big picture, especially lay people like us. So this lecture series is designed for, like, people who don't necessarily know all the math, So if you get into the physics, like you get into the really nitty gritty stuff, sometimes those lectures can bog down a little bit. But when you talk about, like, where do we come from? Why are there stars? When did they appear? That stuff, the big concepts, I think it fires their imagination,
Right. It's different than amateur astronomers who don't usually come to these talks. And it's different than students who don't usually come to these talks. It's armchair enthusiasts.
Like
that's what we call them. It's people who are just fascinated by astronomy.
That's where I belong. Yep, that's it. So the first night I met you, I remember this distinctly. It was light up night. And for those who don't know what light up night is in Pittsburgh, usually it was the beginning of the holiday season, like the holiday shopping season, although now that's like July. But it was November, and you guys usually do the third Friday in November. And it's free, by the way, but you have to sign up. Yeah, there's a limited number of seats, which I thought was really cool. So
50. They're cherry wood chairs, the antique, beautiful chairs.
It's an amazing lecture room. I've heard so many great things in there. I've had such great thoughts. But I was there with my friend Karen, and she and I were joking around, cutting up as usual. And we were in the library, I think, and you walked in, and I didn't know who you were. I didn't know that you were kind of in charge of this whole thing. We were talking, and I made some weird comment about light up night being the holiday, the bane of optical astronomers, or something like that, like the worst holiday for optical astronomers. And you were like, "Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that." And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead. I'm no charge." And you went up and said something, and then I realized that you were introducing the lecture, and I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what just happened here?" So that was kind of cool.
Stole your line.
That's okay. No, I gave you permission, so it's perfectly fine. But yeah, it's just.
I used that line again when I did the TED talk. I talked about loot up night and light up night. So
you do.
For it's called Earth Hour. It's the last Saturday in March every year, from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. People all over the world turn their lights off. And so we did it big. One year we did it really big. We had over 130 buildings in Pittsburgh turn their lights off at the same time.
I remember, yeah. And we took a before and after, or you took a before and after photo, yeah.
Yeah, and we hoped people wouldn't call it loot up night, like, as opposed to light up night.
Yeah. I love it. I still don't leave my porch light on because of you. I really don't.
Oh, how nice.
Because you said, I think about that a lot, because I used to think, well, what if I get a delivery? Well, number one, how many deliveries do I get? Right?
1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And if the pizza guy's coming, I can turn the light on temporarily and then shut it off. It does have a switch. And there were all these things that you talked about, how that affects, like, wildlife and that sort of thing. I actually, instead, because of getting all these deliveries now, because, we had to do that. I made a big sign. I've been painting, like, numbers on sides. So, like, I've been doing like this kind of stuff for people, for their, like, mailboxes and things, just so the Amazon guys don't get lost. Because, like, I don't care How many times I've given directions to Amazon guys are like, yeah, I know the numbers are weird. Here it goes, blah, blah, blah. It skips this one. You got to go down that street. So, but
Yeah.
science
Yeah.
can do a lot. You don't need the lights all the time, right?
Yeah. I started into that about 7 years ago now. And I realized that it was really hard to go back to being an astronomer after taking off decades to raise kids. And I couldn't dive back into the really complex, using lots of computations after having not been around computers for decades. Like, that part was so hard. So
like the technological jump was just like, boom.
It was hard. I had followed the astronomy. I knew what had been discovered and what people were doing, but I couldn't use the tools that they were using now. So I decided that light pollution was something I could fix in the world.
Let's fix the world. Why not? Dream big.
Right. So I started by just doing talks, and I have done now more than 50 talks, and
Wow.
some of them have been pretty big talks. And
You did a TED Talk, which not everybody I know has done a TED Talk. That's impressive.
So that was in Pittsburgh, the TEDxPittsburgh. It was at the Biome Theater, which has many hundreds of seats, and it was exciting, but I couldn't see anybody because they were in the dark, so I wasn't scared. In fact, I generally don't get nervous until after the talk. I don't know why that is.
I have the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the adrenaline rush gets you through the talk, and then afterwards you're like, what did I just say? What did I just do? But that was fun. I made so many mistakes, and then the kind people who edited that talk, I walked out there and I forgot to have the clicker. So I had to walk back and get the clicker. And then I walked back out there again, and I was pushing the buttons and nothing was happening. So I walked back there again and I got a different clicker and I walked back out again.
Oh my goodness.
They cut that part out.
Well, it's, but that's the thing. I think sometimes when people see, that polished, that edited version, that with the flying graphics and, that facade. I mean, I think one of the great things about what's happened with like this kind of stuff, like this forum that we're in right now, is that you do have dogs barking in the background. You have little kids walking in, and the mailman comes, and and there's life is happening around you, and it's not all staged and perfect and the lighting's perfect, and we got this, that, and the other thing, and I think that makes it so much more accessible. It makes us seem so much more human to each other, and so when we get the
change the lighting.
Yeah, well, you changed the background. That background actually, that's kind of like what the Biome Theater. I mean,
all in red. Yeah,
beautiful. But yeah, I think that makes us more relatable. So instead of it's like, oh my God, look at that astronomer on the stage. She knows so much more than me. She does, but she's also a human being too. That somebody that's approachable, I can talk to. Joke around with, laugh with, and it's, it makes it, I find it facilitates my learning better, I think, because.
One of the other funny things that happened during there is they said, put the battery pack for the mic in your pocket. And I was like, look at me. Do I have pockets? Girls don't wear pockets.
Women don't have pockets.
He said, clip it to your belt. I said, look at me. I don't have a belt. He said, hold it in your hand. I'm like, I'm not holding that in one hand and the clicker in the other hand. And then what do I gesture with? Because I gesture all the time.
Right.
So he taped it to my bra in the back, down the back of my dress, which had a green light on it. And so I turned around, and not only do I have a hunchback, I have a green light on my back.
It's like somebody has like a scope on you or something. That's hilarious. A laser pointer or something. Like, look at her back. Oh my gosh. See, that's awesome. That's the type of stuff you don't hear at TED Talks.
From now on, I will always wear a belt and have some jacket with pockets, but just that was like a first. That was fun.
Well, I'm guessing there's no pockets in that. I love your dress. Like, that's amazing. Regency era dress, right?
So Regency are flat in the front.
Mhm.
Renaissance dresses are the big puffy ones.
Right.
But I've been doing Regency dances on Zoom, and they're not that much fun. They go, put your hands up and go to the right with your hands, and then go to the left with your hands, and then go around in a circle with your hands.
Sounds like the hokey pokey. But just like during the last years of the reign of George III, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
In
Was that
general,
the Regency, right?
the times, you and your history.
I am a historian. I really do love history.
Yeah, I live in the future. I don't know. I don't know any of that stuff.
A time traveler. So speaking of which, we were talking about your dog, and your dog was barking earlier, and your dog's name, and you said his name was
Procyon.
Procyon, and I said, oh, of course, named after a star like Procyon, and you said yes, but
Yeah, the Greeks. So my heritage is Greek and Albanian. The Greeks, the ancient Greeks, didn't use that sound for C. It was a K sound, and so it would theoretically be pronounced Procyon, the star. But
yeah,
no.
yeah, and the Latin, it's not like that in Latin too. In classical Latin, in ecclesiastical Latin, they use the soft C, but in historical Latin, if you were going to go back into time and you were going to go meet Julius Caesar instead of Julius Caesar, that's how you would pronounce his name, Julius Caesar. And then we always quote guys like Cicero, right? He's Kikero. Kikero. Can you imagine calling Cicero Kiki? Hey, Kiki, get over here and have some more grapes. Yeah, it's hilarious. I love it. And then, of course, the Veni Vidi Vici. There's somebody who said that I think we know this for a fact, that Cato wrote a book on like pronunciation or something of that nature. And he said, and there was a Latin teacher who was saying like, one of the students raised his hands. Isn't it supposed to be the V supposed to sound like a W, like when? He's like, oh yeah, sure. I'm sure that Caesar said Veni Vidi Vici. There's no way he said that. And it's like, well, yeah, he probably did. But that's we write about, you write science fiction, right? And I've written some, and I think about these things. You think about, if you're going to travel back in time, there's really only so far back you could travel, and you'd have to probably have to stay in the English speaking areas of the planet, because you would have no idea what was going on if you like travel back to ancient Rome. Like, you'd be completely lost.
Unless you had the universal translator.
Yeah, isn't it great that there's Babel fish? Yeah. Things in your ear.
Why do you like fiction so much? Like, why do you like historical things so much? I can't even read historical fiction.
Yeah.
Like,
well, because most of historical fiction is really poorly written. That's why you can't read it. I mean,
because I don't know anything. So if I look at like Harry Turtledove's alternate history,
yeah,
and he presupposes that the South won the war, like, yeah. I don't know, did they? I don't know history that much.
Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is you have to, if you don't know what really happened, then the speculation part is only fun for people that know what happened, so that they can like look at the alternative, right? But here's the thing. The problem is I tend not to watch those kinds of things, because my brain will get confused and I'll think that really happened, So I tend to read the straight history, and then I imagine based on my own, but I don't really watch the alternative stuff, because it's just,
it can be very confusing. The Spanish Armada sank, didn't sink, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, right. Washed up on the shore of Ireland, and
yeah, Scott Westerfeld writes young adult fiction in that vein, and at the end of each book, Behemoth, he'll write, this is what actually happened.
Yes.
And exactly what I changed to suppose that, and here's the point at which the histories diverge, because everybody seems, especially young people, seem to have that problem.
Well, sure. I mean, if you're 13 years old and you haven't studied that part of history yet, I mean, we don't even get to European history until high school usually. I mean, we barely get through American history in the way that, well, at least the way the curriculum was run out the way when I went to school, I have no idea what they're doing now, but I don't even know if they teach history anymore. It's all STEAM, right? So I don't think STEAM is part of history. It'd be like, or actually it's STEM. It's not even STEAM. In fact, Tara, my significant other, she is introducing the A to, STEM, making it STEAM in the Boys and Girls Club of Western Pennsylvania, because they haven't had an arts program for a while. So, there's a lot, it's interesting. There's a lot, it's transformed. There's a lot that's been lost.
Yeah, I did a lot of outreach. We got a grant through the city at one point for light pollution, and I'm trying to think, it was like a $15,000, I think, Heinz Endowments grant. I curated 3 space art galleries.
Oh,
So
right.
I would put up anybody who had anything that had stars in it. Literally, there was a guy that had a big slice of pizza, a starry background, and I was like, "You're in."
I remember that. I remember one that we went to at the Newkirk. It was over, and I don't think I brought that one. I think I brought a different one with pyramids in it or something.
Oh, that's right. And didn't Tara have a beautiful vase?
Yes.
Brother on it.
Yeah, actually, so I was messing around with the technique with this glaze.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, this is one of mine. And what I did was I glazed the pot. Well, before I glazed the pot by dunking it in the glaze, what you do in order to keep the bottom from getting glaze on it and sticking to you put wax on it. So I put wax and a pattern of spiral galaxy. It turned out okay. The problem, it cracked, but that happens.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, I mean, I put my gloves in there. So
you could use that for a flower pot, which you're supposed to have cracked.
You sure can. Yep, a lot of pottery becomes flower pots.
Can you make more? Can you make me one?
Yeah.
How long
you
does
can have that one if you want.
Does that take a long time?
Yeah, so the process is several stages. So you throw the raw clay on the wheel in order to get a circular shape. You can form it by hand and build it or coil it. There's a whole bunch of different ways, but the classic scene from Ghost where they're on the pottery wheel, that's just to get a round shape, a cylindrical shape or anything round. And then from there you can add bits, you can subtract bits. Obviously, like if you make a cup, you're going to make the round part first, and then you'll make the handle later, and you attach that with slip, which is just this clay and water mixed together. This is one of my Star Wars cups. Everything is proceeding as I had foreseen. And wicked cackle, and the letters ran a little bit, so that one's not going to probably get sold. But so you end up having a lot of pottery in your house. But anyway, yeah, the stage is you throw the raw clay, then you let that dry, and then you fire that. And then when you fire that, you get what's called bisque, and bisque is really brittle. So you can't like put water in it or anything. It'll just disintegrate. So what you do is you add glaze to the. So you can either do 2 things. You can paint it with underglaze and add a clear glaze on top, or you can just dip it into a glaze that's colored or not colored, and then you fire it again. And when you fire it the second time, there's a chemical reaction that happens between the glaze and the clay, and they become a substance that causes the pottery to be a solid, contiguous piece. And then hopefully, if everything happens just right in the oven, then everything heats at a uniform temperature. That's why it's very important to get the clay usually at like the same depth all the way around, or you can vary it a little bit, but then you run the risk of there being a split. And so yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. And when you get a nice bunch that come out and they all come out right, it's celebration time, because man, that doesn't happen all the time.
Do you have the spinning wheel in your house, in your shop?
Yeah, so we had a pottery studio, and we rented a space, and it was giant. It was an old used car dealership, so it was a big garage, but we had to close that for whenever the shutdown happened. So we sold as much as we could, and we kept what we wanted. So I have currently 3 wheels. I have 2 in my attic, 1 in my basement, and I actually have a kick wheel on my front porch. So I could teach people outside if the weather's nice. And yeah, it's just a giant piece of concrete that you push with your feet. And then on top, there's a wheel head that's just a platter. And that's what you spin the pottery on. You can make it like that. So yeah, I got wheels. We got wheels.
I got wheels.
Yeah, we got some wheels. There's no doubt about that. But like I said, you don't even have to do that. You can just buy like, 10 pounds of clay off of, Amazon, have it shipped to your house and just make stuff by hand, if you want. You can make figurines, you can make, cups, just, yeah, you can do. It's neat.
I've been buying a lot of pots. That's what just arrived and when the dog barked right before we started. I put a deck on my house this year.
Oh, okay. So you're going to plant some.
Which is bigger than my house. Well, my yard's not ready yet. So I figured if I just got a bunch of pots, I could have a garden on my deck in pots.
So there'll be a link in the description below to your empty house. I mean, your empty house, your tiny house tour. So, and your empty deck, which will now be filled.
Yeah. Well,
so you're going to do a vegetable garden or a flower garden? So
last year I put up hugelkultur mounds against the back part of my yard. First I dug a ditch by hand, exercise.
Oh my.
And I know it's 100 feet.
Whoa.
Logs, branches, twigs, sticks from the yard, from the woods, and then grasses, dried grasses. And then you put the soil on top of that. And so then when all that organic matter decomposes, it gives off heat like a compost pile. And then also you're getting the roots going down into the nutrients, the decomposing wood. So it's really good. This is old technology. These mounds are 5 feet high. So they're easy to reach. It's like a raised bed. You can just pick things at eye level, but also it stays a little warmer in the fall and a little earlier in the spring. It's warmer because of the decomposition. And so your garden season is extended a little bit. And I also, permaculture rules, I built it so that water that's flowing down the hill won't flow into the house. It's like blocking water from shoving it off to the sides.
It's your barrier.
So I had a great garden last year. I'm not ready to do a yard yet. I want to do a clover yard. I don't want to do grass.
Well, mine's half clover, whether I want it to be or not. So I guess I'm already doing that.
Yeah.
Last year was a great year for planting. It was like the perfect year for tomatoes. That classic Italian vegetable garden. Really.
Where did you have yours? Out
in my backyard. One of the first things I did when I bought a house instead of renting a house was, there were two things. One was a library. And the second was, because I moved in the fall, so I couldn't plant really. I didn't know enough about it to do the over the winter thing with squash and things of that nature. But parsnips or root, like carrots and things like that. So, but I had all winter to think about it. And I did a tomato garden, and man, that soil had never been used before. So I got tomatoes like crazy the first year. Actually, the first 2 years. It was amazing. Yeah. So
I was not ready. I looked at my tomatoes and there were little brown things all over and the leaves were starting to disappear. And I thought the deer are eating the tops of the leaves. And then I saw these 5-inch worms.
Yeah,
worms. Hornworms.
Yeah.
I was like, what are those things?
Well, you're out there in the country, you get wildlife. Like you got big worms out there,
Yeah. We're something.
I see people talk about that. I haven't had that problem.
Yeah.
Close to the city, so I don't think we get as many pests or well, they're not
I'm in the city.
Yeah.
But I'm out I have 8 acres. So it's just woods. And it's gorgeous. And it's beautiful. And I had the property before I bought the house. So the house was built on South Side by a company called Work Pittsburgh, which was a nonprofit designed to help people coming out of jail get a job, because they would come out of jail, they have felony records and couldn't get a job anywhere. And, that leads to recidivism. But I love the house. It's gorgeous. And they put it on a truck. It took 9 months to get permitting for the city. And then the trip from Southside to my place, which is like 6 miles, took 9.5 hours.
They took their time, huh?
Because they had to have, it was a huge caravan of vehicles, and they had a crane truck in front with police escort that lifted up all the street lights, because my house is 15 feet tall, and then it was on a 5-foot truck, so it was 20 feet tall. It couldn't go under any underpasses.
Yeah.
Entire city on Facebook. There's this group on Facebook with like 60,000 people that pay attention to what's going on in the city at all times. Everybody was following it, and they were taking pictures and posting it. My house went over the Birmingham Bridge, up into the city downtown on Fifth Avenue, and then came out and went into Oakland, around the Cathedral of Learning, down Forbes, right past CMU.
Right where you drive all the time.
It was incredible. And then it went down Murray Avenue and Squirrel Hill, and all the people were taking pictures of it and sending me pictures. And then it went all the way down and through Greenfield and over the Glenwood Bridge and then up to my property. And by that time it was snowing, and it got stuck going up the hill to my property.
Yeah, snow can be an issue around here.
Yeah, but it was great. And
how did they get it out of the snow?
It took a lot of manpower. They're pushing it and pulling it. I thought for sure the whole house was just going to crumple.
So you told me when you were designing this house, you designed a lot of features, and you had a lot of ideas for the features. You were talking about this great idea for a countertop that had like fiber optic lights underneath, and you were going to like do it like as the sky appears, at certain times a year, in Pittsburgh, and because that's your dream, right? Our dream is to like have all the lights out, be able to see the Milky Way from a point. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could do that? So, but you had an idea where you were going to do that in a countertop. Did that ever materialize? That seemed like a lot of like engineering and design effort to get that to happen.
Yep, I got it.
Got it. That's fantastic.
So the guy's name is Richard Hoadley. He was the only one who, a true artisan, young guy, took it on. It was this crazy project because it's 9 feet by 9 feet, and then it goes a little bit to the corner. He pressed in white and gray parts and then poured in the darker parts. So it does look like the Milky Way just in the cement itself. But before he did that, he made a frame, and he put in 400 fiber optic cables with a little bit of glue, sticking them in one by one into a frame by hand, 4 different sizes, big, medium, small, and smaller, so they look like real stars. We did talk about, did we want to do constellations and have it sketched out, but they break, a lot of them break while you're doing it.
Right.
And so didn't really want to have like 3 stars in Orion's belt, but one of them broke, and so
there
that
goes
was
Procyon. Yep,
yeah.
exactly.
So it's just a random scatter, and the actual fiber optic bundle changes color, so they could be red, green, or blue, or changing, red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green,
yeah,
purple, or yellow, or white. So
how appropriate for an astronomer, but that's like the Rolls Royce of countertops. I mean, that's literally handmade, hand painted, hand constructed. Never be another one like it. You can't get this mass produced.
And it's so like easy to care for. I never thought I would love it this much. And he put glass nodules in it at one point to be like an asteroid belt, and then polished them so you can like see into the counter a little bit. It's really pretty.
That's
Everything
great.
in the house, since it's a tiny house, everything in the house was really carefully designed and thought out, and fairly expensive because I have no furniture. I don't have a couch. I don't have a TV. Like the things people spend money on, I didn't have to spend money on.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of money on other.
You can allocate those funds to other
things. I have a thermal earth tube that catches the wind like 65 feet from my house, and then goes 6 feet underground, and then comes up into the living room area. It's all one area. I don't have any doors. It's just one big area. But that brings in cooler air in the summer because it cools with the temperature of the earth. and then comes up into the house.
That could also serve as a sally port if you were ever under siege, you know, so you could like, you know, escape the castle and attack the forces around the rear, you know, that's.
If I was
Sure.
6 inches big.
Oh, it's only that big? Oh, okay. Well, that's not going to work then. Next house, you know.
Yeah, but I do have
something.
a water reclamation roof. I have a butterfly roof that goes like this.
Hmm?
Ooh, sorry. And then
Oh, yeah.
I know I
The
disappear.
background.
I do that. So that catches the water and it goes into a big cistern.
Yeah, most people have a house like this so that the water goes away, and you have one that catches the water. So, you know,
It's really fun.
why
And
not be different?
the
You know?
whole south side is glass so that it's passive solar. And I have phase change materials. If a material changes state, it extracts energy to melt, right? So I have coconut oil in craft glass blocks, and they melt in the sun, and then at night they re-solidify and give the energy, the heat back to the room.
Nice.
It's a really poor man's solution. There are, mostly in Europe, actual particle boards that have this like gel beads in it that does the same scientific process.
Mhm.
I just couldn't get any small amounts. You know, if I was going
Yeah.
to buy 10 million square feet of it, sure,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
have it. Like
There's a cargo ship. Here, come on.
the Phipps, sustainable landscape building, that if you go to Phipps Conservatory and you go straight across and out the other side, that building, not the classroom, but that giant building where they have the offices, that
Mhm.
has a ton of sustainable features. And that's one.
Yeah, that's an amazing. The technology that was used to redo Phipps is just astounding. It really is.
They have a vertical axis wind turbine. I really want one.
Isn't it funny what when you say things like that, you know, most people are like, you know, I really want like Porsche SUV, you know, like, you know, I want a vertical access turbine, you know, like that's awesome. I think, you know, if I ever buy a house again, I made a lot of mistakes on my first house. But like, you know, there's a lot of things like that which are passive solutions to problems. Like my house faces west and it blocks the sun most of the day. So therefore my sidewalk, I got to clear it. The snow doesn't melt. I have to clear it. So the next house I buy is going to face south or east. There's no doubt, because it's going to have, you know, because it will take care of itself to some degree. So there are lots of solutions like that. And when people start knocking out walls, like you see these home improvement shows, and they're like, oh, we're going to knock out this wall, we're going to open this space, we're going to do this. It's like, those architects had something in mind. Those people designed houses for different reasons, so that you can maybe open the windows and get a breeze coming through from east to west, or depending on which area of the country you live in, north to south, depends on, like, you know, and you know, there was thought put into these things, and now you're knocking out walls and putting up this and making, you know, and it's like, so when you get a chance like you did to do it from scratch, you have an opportunity to do so many things right from the very beginning, you know, and that's great. I've always
Houses have those transom windows like over the doors. Those served a purpose.
yeah, you drew your manuscript over there so that the publisher would read it, right?
Over the transom.
Over the transom, right? That was it.
Yeah.
Which, my goodness, you have an anthology that you publish every year. Triangulation was, yeah. I guess you'll have to turn off your background in order to show it. It looks like, otherwise it's going to interfere.
Go to the nun background and you get to see my
Procyon.
bedroom and my dog puppy. Hey, look at us.
I'm having a moment here. I love dogs.
So this is my bedroom. This is my Murphy bed right behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Just opens and I can lay it down. This is oh, look, it coordinates with my dress.
How did that happen?
This is the
very
first one.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's the one that I edited. I started this whole series in 2003 and it's been going every year. We did it to be an educational anthology. We were writers. We wanted to see what it was like to be an editor. And so one by one, 10 different people now have taken turns editing the anthology. And if you read hundreds of stories that start with somebody waking up and looking in a mirror to describe what they look like, you know never to do that again.
So I was going to say, so what did you glean from the fact, being a writer and being an editor are completely different things, right?
Yeah.
But people think they're like, oh no, that's like, being a bartender, being a waitress. No, 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 no. Completely different things. I'm actually helping someone edit something right now, and I'm doing it as a favor because honestly, it's one of my least favorite things to do. I don't even like editing my own stuff.
I like writing more than editing. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do this, but I think it's a good thing. So we have 25, the last few years, we've had 25 students helping us be first readers, which is a lot of coordinating and a lot of working with them and answering questions and guiding them. And they are learning from reading manuscripts, and they put comments and rank them, and we go by what they say. The other thing that we're doing that is it's different lately. So I got a grant from Metro 21 about light pollution in 2019, and they paid for this issue of Triangulation, which is about light pollution, dark skies, Triangulation, dark skies. So this is Pittsburgh with the Milky Way right on top of it.
That's what we're looking for.
That would be nice. All you people out there,
Turn your lights off.
keep your lights off or put them on dimmers or timers or motion sensors. Or
Well, tell people why though. I mean, tell people why, because the main reasons that people want to keep their lights on are like safety, right? Either personal safety because they're walking up the steps, right, and they don't want to trip, or I'm afraid somebody's hiding in the dark and they're going to mug me when I get my keys out of my, purse, these are legitimate concerns. However, you already mentioned a couple ways you can address these things, right?
right. So for that, shielding the lights so they don't go up in the sky, just shielding them and putting the light where you need it, when you need it, where you need it, how much you need. You don't have to have it like a football stadium, just enough to see. And also glare is an issue. So you could have a light by your door that is shining right in your face, hiding the guy that's standing right by the door. Like you have to light smart. So that's really the thing that we're looking for, is use redder end of the spectrum lights, like an amber light, a bug light, yellow lights. They don't affect the environment as much. They don't affect people as much.
Well, they don't affect your night vision as much either. So you're more perceptive. So when you go out to a field, you go to a star party, if you go up to central Pennsylvania, north central, where that you basically can see the Milky Way, and people are using like, you only use red light flashlights while you're like looking for at your star charts and whatnot, and adjusting your scopes, because you're not going to ruin somebody else's good time because they just waited 20 minutes for their eyes to adapt to the dark, right?
Yeah, but also blue light scatters more than red light. So the more blue is in a light, the more you're going to scatter it all over the sky.
Dr. Diane, why is the sky blue?
Yeah, exactly. That's why the sky is
That's
blue.
why the sky is blue.
But so Pittsburgh's changing out 45,000 streetlights in a couple years. They're going to go from the old sodium vapor lights, which had a reddish tone. They were actually 2200 Kelvin temperature wise. And they're going to change all these lights to the much more efficient, like much more efficient. The lighting is going to go down.
Orders of magnitude more efficient.
Right, like 20% of what it was. LEDs.
And you won't have to change them like every 6 months. You'll only have to change them like every 20 years,
Yeah, we don't even know really, because we haven't had the ones that we have now. We know it's at least 10 years. It could be much longer. So the thing is, I'm working with the city. DOME is the department that's working on this, and we've been looking at lights. They're going to put out an RFP any day now that's shielded dimmable and under 2700 Kelvin.
Tell us what an RFP is.
A request for proposal. So that's when all the companies like Phipps and Cree, the lighting companies, send their proposal in. That's
Okay.
slightly different than the people who are going to install them. That's a different company. So this is the first step, is who's going to make the lights, and then who's going to put them in will come later.
So I remember you talking about this at the observatory, and I remember you saying you were working at the city and you had a meeting with the mayor, and it just so happened that every once in a while the mayor would come in and have an early dinner before he would go on this public access channel to do his thing at the restaurant where I worked. And so I plugged it. I plugged it for you. I was like, hey, there's something that's going to come across your desk. It has to do with like changing out the lights. This is really good idea for you. You should do this. It's going to save you money. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. I went down while you're talking points with him, and the poor guy's like eating a Reuben sandwich going, look, man, do I really have to do this? But like, I had to do it. I normally don't do that, but I had to do. I did it. I did it on your behalf. I just wanted you.
I'm so glad you did that. Yeah, he
You have
comes
to
up
do
to the observatory every once in a while. He was the executive producer for the Allegheny Observatory movie, the Undaunted, the Forgotten Giants of Allegheny Observatory.
Which is a great movie.
Great.
Actually, there was a tie-in to this with a previous interview. I was interviewing a gentleman named Pete Geisler, who wrote a book about the Ferris wheel and the man who invented the Ferris wheel. And he lived in Pittsburgh, and he died in Pittsburgh, actually. He only lived here for a few years. But part of the story, there was, we were talking about the Thaw Mansion. And I said, Thaw? I said, like the Thaw telescope. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, no. I said, rich guys in the late 1800s used to collect observatories. Like that was a thing. It was like football teams. Now you're Mark Cuban, you buy a basketball team, you buy a football team. Now they used to like fund observatories, and Allegheny Observatory has a telescope named after this guy named Thaw, right? Well, he tells me this story about Thaw, and it's not the same Thaw. It's his son. It's his second son, I believe. And who shot a guy on the roof of Madison Square Garden in front of like
everybody,
people. Yeah. And so it turned out to be this whole thing. So like, I never made that connection. I knew of Thaw Mansion. I never really heard that.
Two things are connected.
See how this works? It's unbelievable. I can't believe it. But like, it just, these topics come up, and like Pittsburgh's like this though. Pittsburgh is a small town. It's a city, but you can run into the mayor. You can talk to like people on your council. You can have conversations with them. This stuff doesn't happen in Chicago. This doesn't happen in New York City. I mean, it might, but I think it's exceedingly rare, but like, I have a friend, one of Tara's, my significant other, one of her old roommates, Sarah, she now works for a company, an organization that talks to mayors of European cities about environmental compliance and this sort of thing. So, so we were going to meet her. She was in town. We were going to meet her at the Allegheny Sandwich Shop on Western Avenue, right? This is kind of where the Thaw Mansion is. It's Millionaire's Row was over there. So, so we're going to meet her there, and we're sitting there, and the former mayor of the city of Pittsburgh comes in, Tom Murphy, and he's having breakfast there. So she comes in, and so she's working with mayors, and then here's the mayor. So we go over and say hello, and she introduces herself, and he knows me from the restaurant, because when he was running for state rep, he had an office 2 doors down from the place that I worked. So he recognized me. I don't think he knows my name, but he recognized me. So we all sit down, we're having breakfast together, and it turns out Tom is just about to leave to China to do a goodwill tour for basically environmental compliance, like basically the same thing. So like, how does this happen? Like it just happens. Like things like this, if you just walk around, you like it, I don't know. I love it. I love this town. It's just great.
So many times. I got an Amazon delivery, and the girl gave me the package. The woman gave me the package, and then she stood there, and I was like, why is she standing there? She doesn't expect a tip. And she stood there and she blurted out, I love your Allegheny Observatory tours and lecture series. And Sarah's old fairy who I toured her around my house and we talked about writing, and she had written this ghost story. And so I invited her to come to my writing group, and now she's in my writing group.
You never know. And that's the thing. You never know how you're going to influence people, how you're going to affect people, unintentionally. And that's the thing. Your lecture, I can't even tell you what that did for me. That was totally on a personal level. But this is exactly what I'm trying to do with all of this. Like we were talking about, like taking down the masks and the veneer and all that sort of thing, like people wearing stuff like this and then like standing up and they're wearing like, shorts or whatever. Although I'm not, I have my cummerbund. I'm ready because I haven't worn this in a long time and it feels good. But yeah, it's reaching out, connecting, maybe, and then I set up a group on Facebook, which I was never a Facebook person, but I'm starting to learn how to use it wisely, I think. But and then I'll connect the videos here, and then if somebody wants to talk about the Thaw Mansion, I can hook them up with Pete Geisler or somebody. Because one of the best things about working in the restaurant isn't the running around and getting people more ranch dressing. It's talking about what is it about ranch dressing in Pittsburgh? I don't get it. But it's we have Heinz ketchup for crying out loud. But it's making connections. It's talking to people and having those conversations. And now I get to do it uninterrupted and saying, oh my gosh, you should meet, and then like, wait a minute, I know him. I can introduce you to him. Are you kidding me? Yeah, no problem. Here, and that sort of thing. It's developing a community. I think the older I get, and another guest of mine, Wendy, she said it really well. She said, the older I get, the more I realize that it's the connections, that's what it is. It's being woven in the tapestry of other people's lives. Is it Pericles? I think Pericles says something like, it's not what we leave behind in stone monuments, but the weaving of ourselves into other people's lives. That's our legacy, and he says it better than I just said it. But it was, this idea has been around for a long time, fame, money, not that I have either of those, but what ultimately is it if you don't use it for good, right? Use it for good. So, use your notoriety for that. But you've certainly been an example of that for me. Yeah.
That is very wise. And I try to do that. I try to make myself a platform for the kinds of things that I want to put out there in the world. The Two Scientists Walk into a Bar was a program at Carnegie Science Center. I'm so embarrassed.
You brought it up. I did not bring that up. You said it. I didn't bring that up. Now you're going to have to finish it.
I worked at Carnegie Science Center in the early days, giving planetarium shows. And then that was back when it was where the Children's Museum is now. Is this dating me? And so, but I've been working on and off at Carnegie Science Center for a while. I was in the teacher, their program there, it's like an advisory program.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second so you don't feel bad about dating yourself. Okay. I knew it as Buell Planetarium. I went to sky shows there when I was a kid. I was the guy trying to catch the little marble that was using the refractive mirrors that didn't, that was the fan. Yep. And that was the first time I ever saw a Foucault pendulum. And I still, didn't understand what the heck that was or how that worked, but now I do. But, it only took 50, well, we won't say how long, years. So, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So they came up with this program. They didn't start it. It was started in San Francisco. It's a national program. Two scientists walk into a bar. So in San Francisco, they had 50 scientists, 100 scientists in 50 bars. We couldn't do that good, but we got up to like 30 bars with 60.
And that's when my router made this crazy noise like a dryer going off, an old-time laundromat, like this, which I had never heard from the router before. And the recording stopped because we had no internet. So that's the end of part one, because that's what the universe said to do. So now you'll have to tune into part two. Click here. It's on the screen.
And you'll see part 2, and we'll pick up with Diane telling a joke about 2 scientists walking into a bar. Okay. See you there.